Okay, everyone. So when last we parted, we had just made a bunch of objects. We just made a bunch of data types, right? So this is just for practice, just illustrating this is JavaScript. What does this do for us? Like I said, what we're working towards here is we're working towards separating the content of our page from its structure, okay? Just to give this a bit of a broader context, why is that? Well, as I mentioned in class a couple of times, when we're creating visualizations, a lot of times the structure, it won't necessarily be HTML, but essentially the structure of our charts, right, the stuff that's going to turn our data into charts, is actually code that is going to be coming from somewhere else, right? It might be coming from Google, it might be coming from just basically a charting library, right? But the structure that produces our visuals is going to be coming from somewhere else. What we're going to be providing is the data and the kind of customizing material that will make that chart, map, graph, whatever, that will shape it the way that we want and present it the way that we want. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get ourselves to a place where we understand how to have our content, our data, be independent from the structure that gives it visual form, basically. Okay, so I have all this stuff. Now here's the thing, a script tag, this stuff doesn't show up on the page. Now I had my alert. The alert made something happen, something pretty unpleasant happen. But again, just sort of proving that it exists in the world. So I'm going to flip to my browser view and just kind of demonstrate, I reloaded the page here. I don't see, right? I don't see that stuff that I added inside those script tags doesn't show up, okay? It's not meant to show up. Browsers don't display JavaScript because JavaScript is not structure and it's not style. It's content and interactivity. And so unless we tell it, unless we put it inside some HTML, it's never going to show up on the page. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't, as developers, right, as programmers, want to be able to interact with it and kind of see what's going on with it. So fortunately for us, I'm in Chrome right now, and I recommend that you use Chrome for this part of the work. Most of it, in fact. They have something called Developer Tools. And it's not something you need to add. It's part of Chrome. So if you're running Chrome, you're already there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, some of you might have done this in the past. You might have looked at the page source of a web page, or you may have chosen this inspect thing. So that's what I've done here. I'm going to right click, choose inspect. Okay, and it's going to bring up this window. And what you'll notice, and actually I prefer to have this window at the bottom. I don't like it at the side, so I'm actually going to use this little menu to move it to the bottom. Okay, so it has a bunch of tabs in here that let us see the page in different ways. So you'll notice down here that actually this is showing us all of the HTML, all of our CSS, right? Visible right here. So I'm editing it in Aptana, but it is visible to me through this console window, no problem. Okay. That's number one. Number two is what we call the console. Now, the console is our opportunity to interact essentially with some of the invisible, basically with the JavaScript portion of our page. How do we do that? Well, actually, we can, in a way, we can ask questions of the JavaScript through this console. We can also, from inside Aptana, we can send messages to the console from our code. So how does this work? Well, there is a built-in mechanism called ConsoleLog, okay? And inside these round parentheses, right, I can tell it what I want it to log. So I can just put a message in there, right? So instead of my alert, right, creating that ugly pop-up, I can say, by the way, when you get to this point in the page, I want you to put out to I want you to write on the console, hello world. And if I come back here and I reload my page, I see indeed the message, hello world appears. You'll also notice that it gives me some information about where that came from. It tells me, okay, this is the name of the file, newsfeed.html. Well, that's not so surprising. It's the only file we have at the moment. And then it gives me this :71. 71 is the line number where that code was, okay? Now, we kind of knew that because we're the ones who put the console log message there at this point. Oops, and I forgot my semicolon. Not the end of the world, you can see, but very important to consider nonetheless. Always want to do that. Yeah, I told it to do that. Now, here's the thing, and this is the sort of power. This is where we start to kind of see the power of the way this is organized. So if we think back to our analogy that creating a variable is like introducing a character in a story, the reason why we give variables labels and humans names and other things names, right, is so that we can refer to them, right? So I can have someone in a story. I can say, I always hate when I get to these examples. I can say Susan McGregor was a professor of journalism at Columbia Journalism School, stranded in the Ottawa airport, right? That could be my introduction to myself as a character. And, maybe you're going to talk about the airport itself or Ottawa or something like that. And then later on in the story, you can say, McGregor had never been to Ottawa before, right? When you refer to the name, your reader, makes a mental connection. They say, oh yeah, there was that person that I heard about before. I'm going to remember what I learned about them. That person was, stranded in the Ottawa airport. Very similar to what happens when we use variable names here in programming. Again, when I use this var, I'm saying, hey computer, make a box, set aside a box in memory. Okay, label that box my num, and into that box put the value 19, or the words hello world, or the list hello world 19. Okay, if I want to find out what's in that box, I just have to give it the label. So if I hand the computer the label, it's going to say, here's what I have in that box. So I can do this by saying, hey, I want you to tell me what's in the box that I labeled my list. And when I say console log, I'm saying, here's the label I'm looking for. Go back, go into the depths of your memory, find the thing that has this label, show me what's in it, okay? And when I say console log, I'm saying, by the way, spit that out to the front of the page. Okay, so now I've got two things. I gave it the string, I said hello world, and then, in this console log, I said, what's inside the box called my list? And it printed it out here. And again, it's showing me where did it come from. Now it's doing something else here, and we'll just take a moment to look at this, okay? It's showing me basically what I have written back there, right? It's showing, the square brackets, the quotes, I mean, quite literally the list as I have written it in Aptana Studio, right? Looks almost identical, but it's actually going a step further here. If I look at this, so if I toggle this little thing, it's saying, hey, so now it's telling me what data type it is, right? It's confirming this, by the way, this is an array, okay? It has a length of 2. And the 0th element, because when we deal with arrays or lists in computers, we basically always start at 0. And it's saying, by the way, the first item, which is in the quote-unquote 0th position, is hello world, and the one in position, or sometimes we call it an index 1, is the number 19. Okay, and then this stuff, which is basically redundant. Okay, so it actually gives us quite a bit of information. So now I just want to demonstrate that another really powerful thing about this is sort of the key thing here is that I can actually change these variables, right? It kind of makes sense if you think about it. It is variable. The value, right, whatever's in the box can be changed. It is variable. And so I can say, let's see, why don't I do this? So I can actually just say, by the way, put something in position number 2, right, in the 3rd spot, but in position number 2 on that list. So I can say my list 2, okay? So again, if we think back here, I've got 0 and 1, so the next one will be 2, right? If I want to add something to the end, it's going to have position numbered 2, or index 2. I can say, by the way, I want that to be, right, equals another item, right? I'm not being very imaginative today. All of your projects will be much more interesting. Okay, and now I can say console log my list, and I can confirm that that has changed. Okay, so do this again. Boom. Look at that. Just like that, right? I just say it and it is true, right? I always think of postmodernist literary theory when I think about modifying variables, right? Because I say it, therefore it is true, right? I literally call it forth into the world by stating it. It now exists. So this is super useful. Now, as we start developing, right, as we kind of do this a little bit more, we don't always want to have to, console logging is helpful, right? We don't always want to have to console log. And actually a really nice thing is that with this interaction with the browser, I don't actually even have to know ahead of time what I want to know the value of, because I can say, oh, wait a second, I tried to modify that. So I can actually just type in here. You can see it's actually bringing up a list of all the variables that I had created on the back end, right? See, it's my Boolean, my list, my num, my object, right? They're just in alphabetical order here, and I can just say return, and it shows me this is what the current value is, right? So what counts as current? Well, it's going to be after it's done reading the entire page, right? And so that means that I have added this here. Now, just to point out from a syntax perspective, what if I wanted to, well, I can just do this interactively here. So I can say, well, what about my object, right? What does that have in it? And again, it's going to identify, say, well, this is an object, and here are the 3 labels, and here are the values that they have. Now, if I wanted to add something here, now an important distinction between lists and objects. We generally create objects when we have things of different types that need to be associated together, right? So often we can think of this as literally characteristics of an object, right? Or an event or something where there's really no logical sense of order. Lists we tend to use when we have items of the same type, things of the same type, not just data type, but sort of meaningfully similar. And often there's some notion of order that can be applied. Sometimes it's sort of arbitrary, it's alphabetical order, right? You could have a list of numbers, obviously this would be in numerical order. So there's this idea that, an array is something that could in theory be sorted in some manner, but objects don't really sort, right? They just have facets, they just have characteristics. So the thing I'll point out here is that this is fine if I want to look at an entire object, but what if I just want to ask about, well, what's the value of, say if I reload this, right? I just want to know on my object, I can't remember what I put in item 3. The answer is number 19, okay? So when I want to find a particular part of an object, I use what I would call dot syntax. So this is just to reflect that when I want to either access, okay, so either access or create something on a list, I use the square brackets. Okay, so again, if I want to say, well, what's my list? What's the thing in position 1? Actually, it also happens to be 19, because if I look at my list, I was using the same values over and over again, right? There it is, 0, 1, 19. So again, if I have something that is part of an object, then I am going to use a dot to get at that. If it's part of a list, I'm going to use square brackets, and I can actually use this to add things as well. So if I want to add another attribute, if you will, another feature to my object, I can just say my object. I can just name it. And I say, oh, my object. Oh wait, I'm not going to do that here. Sorry. Back here in Aptana, right? I can just say, well, I want my object item 4 equals alphabet. Okay. Now I know that in doing this, I have sort of imposed order, right? Because I said, for example, item 1, item 2, item 3. These could be anything, right? It could be height, weight, and eye color. Doesn't matter. Totally arbitrary. But again, if I come back here, just going to reload and look at my object, and there it is. Okay, see you soon.